Good morning. This is John from the Springs Mennonite Church. And I'm here today at the end of the week, just finishing up a week looking at random scriptures. And today I have one that I haven't looked at before. It's 1 Thessalonians chapter 3, and beginning with verse 12. Here's what we see. Paul writes his letter, and he says these things in verses 12 and part of 13. May the Lord make your love for one another and for all people grow and overflow, just as our love for you overflows. May He, as a result, make your heart strong, blameless, and holy. Well, this is kind of like a good benediction after a sermon, perhaps. Maybe I'll either commit it to memory or write it down and use it sometime soon. But, you know, Paul is concerned about the churches he started. Now, this one in Thessalonica was a pretty good church. Had some pretty good folks in it, just like maybe the church you go to. Or if you don't go to church, one that you could be going to. And he knows that living in this world is hard. We think it's hard today. It was hard back then, too. I mean, they didn't have modern medicines. Work was mainly all physical. Housing wasn't the best. Heating was lousy. Sanitation was awful. Just getting nutritious foods was tough. I mean, evidenced by the fact that the lifespan wasn't very long. Life was hard back then. We think we got so much to do here. Well, they had so much to do too, and they had less ability to do it. And I think sometimes we forget that. Sometimes we think our lives are particularly difficult. And while our lives are, and yours might be even more than mine, it's nothing compared to some people. And so Paul wants them to understand what's the most important thing. I remember I used to say in the church, we need to keep the big thing the big thing. Or we need to keep the main thing the main thing. So what is the main thing? What is the big thing? Well, the big thing is here, it says, make your love grow and overflow. Now, when he says overflow, he's not talking about someone who just comes on strong and you can't get rid of them and they're always trying to get attention. That's not it. He's talking about using your gifts and your grace, your time, your money to help those in need. And if you don't know of anyone who's in need, well, give me a call. I can tell you a few of them. You don't have to look very far. Just drive around your community or your little town or your big city or whatever you are. You'll find people in need. And God wants us to have compassion for those folks. Now, don't go down the road, well, they deserve it. Look at those lazy bums. Well, as someone once told me, none of us know the story behind someone's actions. I don't know your past. You don't know mine. I've shared some of mine through this media, but you don't really know what that is. Even my wife doesn't know all of it. But it doesn't really matter. What matters is you and I are supposed to live a life of love and grace and compassion to everybody, every day. We are to overflow with it. Just as his love overflows for us, our love should overflow for others. And in doing that, we receive something. You know, people don't seem to understand. When you give, you also get. Now, you may not get the same thing you're giving, but you do get something. And oftentimes, what you get is far more important than what you gave. Let me give you an example. Let's suppose I'll pick an obvious thing here. You send some money to a village in East Africa so the local school can buy books. If you've never seen a school that doesn't have any books, well, there are plenty of them. So you send some money. Maybe it's not a huge amount. Maybe it is. I don't. Doesn't matter. And you give to those kids a chance to live. Now, what did you get for your money? Did any of those kids come by your house, knock on the door, and say thank you? Probably not. They wouldn't have any way to get here. Did any of those kids come up and give you a big hug and say, "Oh, you were so sweet to do that"? Probably not. And you might have a hard time receiving it, even if they did. What do you get? You get the knowledge that you helped someone else when no one else would. Now, if that doesn't stir your soul, or as my wife said her father used to say, if that doesn't uh, stir a fire in you, then your wood's wet, then something's missing in your life. And what's missing is this giving and receiving of love. Now, I know people who can't seem to receive. I'm going to keep trying to help them. And for those that you know, I hope you'll keep trying to help those. But the result of not trying is awful. You see, it says here that as a result of giving and loving and caring, you make your heart strong, blameless, and holy. Giving changes you. It might change the other person. But if you give it and give it and give it some more, it'll change you. It'll make you into someone that God would smile about and say, ah, they got it. I hope that's your heart's desire. If it isn't, well, try it. You might find out it's a whole lot sweeter than anything you've ever imagined. Well, thanks for listening. You got the whole weekend to work on loving somebody, and I hope you find lots of opportunities. Thanks so much for listening. I'll be back on Monday with another message. And if you have a need or a concern, let us know. We'll do whatever we can as fast as we can to help meet your need. God bless you. I'll talk to you again.